Consider, what is knowledge? Is it merely the possession of facts and figures, the accumulation of data within the confines of memory? Or is it something deeper, something that penetrates the very essence of reality? Knowledge is not a mere cataloging of the world's information, but a profound understanding of its fundamental nature and the principles that govern it. When we speak of knowing, we must first ask, what does it mean to know something fully? To answer this, we must delve into what Aristotle has termed the four causes. It is through these causes that we comprehend not only the essence of a thing, but also its origin and purpose. The first is the material cause. This is the very substance or matter from which a thing is formed. It is the clay in the potter's hands, the bronze of the statue, the sinews of the warrior's arm. But the material alone does not yet define what a thing truly is. Next, we consider the formal cause, the form or essence that gives shape to this material. It is the design that guides the craftsman's hands, the structure that transforms raw potential into actuality. It is what makes the warrior's sinew a tool of strength, or the bronze a statue of a god. But form and matter alone do not bring anything into being. We must account for the efficient cause, the agent or process that brings forth existence. It is the sculptor who carves the marble, the king who decrees a law, the teacher who imparts wisdom. The efficient cause is the source of change, the initiator of motion. Yet, none of these causes can fully define a thing until we consider the final cause. It is the end, the purpose, the ultimate reason for which something exists. The warrior trains for victory. The king rules for the prosperity of his people. And the philosopher speaks to unveil the hidden truths of the world. It is the final cause that gives meaning to all other causes, for it answers the question, why does this thing exist at all? When you understand not only what something is, but why it is, you gain mastery over that thing, both in thought and in action. You will perceive not just the outward appearance of the world, but its inner workings. And with such knowledge, the world itself becomes your ally. This mastery begins with logic, the guiding light that illuminates the path to wisdom, and it is through logic that we shall proceed. Whether it be the simple thoughts of the common man, or the profound reflections of the philosopher, all reasoning is governed by three fundamental principles. These principles form the very bedrock of thought and discourse, the pillars upon which all rationality stands. Without them, our minds would be like ships adrift in a stormy sea, bound for the reefs of confusion and contradiction. The first of these is the principle of identity. What is, is. A tree is a tree, a man is a man, and thus we identify each thing by its essence. Identity is the assurance that each entity in this world is singular in its being, possessing a nature unique to itself. Without this principle, every form would blur and blend, and distinctions between entities would dissolve into chaos. A ruler must see the true nature of each person and thing, to command with wisdom. To know that a loyal man is loyal and a traitor is a traitor is the first step to clear judgment. The second principle is the principle of non-contradiction. It states that nothing can both be and not be at the same time. No assertion can be simultaneously true and false. You cannot say the warrior is brave and in the same breath declare the warrior is not brave. This is the first law of rational discourse, for it shields us from the paralysis of contradiction. Imagine a general who both commands and refrains from command. The army would collapse into indecision, torn between conflicting orders. The non-contradiction principle is the guide to consistency in thought and action. The third principle is the principle of the excluded middle. It tells us that every proposition must either be true or false. There is no middle ground between truth and falsehood. Just as a decision must be made in times of war or peace, so too must a proposition declare itself true or untrue. For if we entertain a middle state between existence and non-existence, we invite ambiguity and error into our judgments. Now let us put these principles to the test. Consider the following statement. A sword is not sharp and is sharp. Does it adhere to the principle of identity? Is the identity of sharpness retained, or do we fall into contradiction? You see, it violates the very essence of logical order, as a sword cannot simultaneously embody sharpness and dullness. Now consider this next statement. A courageous man is both brave and not brave. Such a statement breaks the law of non-contradiction, for bravery and cowardice cannot reside together within the same act or moment. These exercises are the sharpening of your mind's edge, the refining of your reason, that you may wield truth as a blade and logic as a shield. With these principles ingrained, you will find yourself armed against deception. You will think clearly, speak clearly, and act decisively. Remember these principles, for they are the axioms of wisdom. To think otherwise is to embrace confusion. To act otherwise is to court ruin. We now delve into the art of reasoning itself, the structure that underpins all rational argument, the syllogism. A syllogism is not merely a method of arranging thoughts, but a profound tool that compels the mind to see the inevitable connections between ideas. Through its precision, the syllogism allows us to draw conclusions with certainty, as if building a bridge that spans from premise to conclusion, without ever faltering in its support. Imagine, if you will, a statement that proclaims, "All men are mortal." This is our major premise, a universal truth that stands as a foundation. It tells us something true about the nature of all men, without exception. Now let us introduce a second premise. Socrates is a man. This is our minor premise, a specific instance that falls within the domain of the universal. From these two statements, what must necessarily follow? The conclusion that Socrates is mortal emerges as naturally as day follows night. We could not, without contradicting ourselves, affirm the premises yet deny the conclusion. Thus, a syllogism binds our thoughts to a logical sequence, unbreakable by whim or error. Observe how the syllogism is constructed. The major premise serves as a general declaration, such as, "All men are mortal." The minor premise relates this general statement to a specific case, such as, "Socrates is a man," and the conclusion is the inevitable result of uniting these two premises. Socrates is mortal. This structure is not arbitrary, nor is it trivial. It compels the mind to recognize truths that lie hidden within the premises. Consider how you might wield this power. A statesman must argue persuasively. A general must command convincingly. The syllogism ensures that your assertions are built upon solid foundations, that your commands are rooted in unassailable reasoning. Let us test this skill, for true understanding emerges only through practice. Take this major premise: all virtues lead to happiness. Now let us introduce a minor premise. Courage is a virtue. What conclusion naturally follows? It must be that courage leads to happiness. The truth naturally unfolds. The premises, carefully selected, lay down the path upon which the conclusion must walk. Let's take another example. No tyrants are just. Some rulers are tyrants. What must we conclude? We're led to declare that some rulers are not just. Each step is guided by the logical necessity that the syllogism imposes. If our premises are true, then our conclusion must be true as well. You may ask, what value lies in mastering this form? The value is immense. It is through syllogisms that we dissect the arguments of our opponents, expose fallacies, and present our own assertions with the force of unshakable truth. A commander who reasons syllogistically does not merely act. He understands. He sees with clarity the cause and effect, the means and the ends, the principles that guide every decision. Now, I present you with several incomplete syllogisms. Your task is to complete them logically, ensuring that each conclusion flows inevitably from its premises. As you do so, consider the deeper necessity that binds the parts of each argument. Major premise: no virtuous person acts unjustly. Minor premise: some rulers act unjustly. Conclusion: some rulers are not virtuous. Next. Major premise: all actions motivated by greed lead to corruption. Minor premise: some business practices are motivated by greed. Conclusion: some business practices are corrupt. Next. Major premise: all pursuits that cultivate the mind lead to true happiness. Minor premise: philosophy is a pursuit that cultivates the mind. Conclusion: philosophy leads to true happiness. Next. Major premise: all actions based on justice are praiseworthy. Minor premise: defending the weak is an action based on justice. Conclusion: defending the weak is praiseworthy. Next. Major premise: all strategies that consider both logic and empathy succeed. Minor premise: this strategy considers both logic and empathy. Conclusion: this strategy will succeed. Remember, to craft a syllogism is to wield the very fabric of thought itself. It is to impose order on chaos, truth on uncertainty, and through such mastery, to bring the world into alignment with your vision. This is the power of the syllogism, the power of logic, and the power that will one day shape your destiny. Now, we turn our gaze from the realm of pure thought to the intricate dance of human affairs, to leadership and governance, where logic must serve as both our shield and our sword. For in the world of men, chaos and order contend perpetually, and it falls to the leader to bind the forces of disorder and bring forth harmony from conflict. This can only be achieved through sound reasoning, a discerning mind that sees the true nature of things and the causes behind them. Consider that every word spoken is a proposition, every suggestion a premise. It is up to you to judge whether these premises are sound and whether the conclusions they present will lead to prosperity or ruin. A leader whose mind is muddled, whose decisions are rooted in opinion or fear, will see his kingdom unravel as weeds choke a garden untended. Now I present to you the first scenario. A general, full of confidence, argues that increasing the number of soldiers will always lead to victory, as more soldiers equates to greater strength. The logic appears straightforward, but let us test this argument under the lens of true reasoning. What does it mean to say that more soldiers equates to greater strength? Does strength arise solely from numbers, or are there other factors at play? Discipline, loyalty, strategy. Imagine an army swollen with men, but fractured by disloyalty, marred by poor training, and led by a commander lacking in vision. In such a case, more soldiers become a liability, not an asset. Thus, the general's argument, when dissected, violates the principle of non-contradiction, for greater strength and weakness from disorder cannot coexist. You see how logic unmasks the false confidence of ill-founded assertions. The truth is that while more soldiers may increase strength, undisciplined or disloyal soldiers decrease it. A true leader must look beyond the surface, piercing the veil of assumption to uncover the essence of the matter. This is the way to effective command. Consider now a second scenario. An advisor, flush with ambition, suggests that raising taxes will always increase the kingdom's wealth. At first glance, the suggestion seems sound. After all, more revenue is gathered with each increase in tax. But logic urges us to ask further, what is the relationship between taxation and prosperity? At what point does raising taxes no longer generate wealth, but stifles it? Let us frame this in a syllogism. Major premise. Excessive taxation diminishes the productivity of trade and burdens the people. Minor premise. Raising taxes to an unsustainable level constitutes excessive taxation. Conclusion. Raising taxes excessively diminishes the wealth of the kingdom. When viewed through the prism of logic, we see that the advisor's suggestion is dangerously simplistic. A nation, like a tree, must be pruned, but not cut to the root. Too great a burden, and the people's spirit is broken. True wealth arises not from stripping the people bare, but from cultivating a thriving populace whose endeavors enrich the land. Here, the principle of the excluded middle serves us well. Either a tax fosters prosperity, or it breeds resentment and decay. There is no middle ground. In these exercises, you see that logical reasoning is not confined to the study of abstractions. It is a weapon of immense power, a tool that can cut through the fog of rhetoric, expose the core of arguments, and reveal the truth that lies at their heart. This is how a leader must think, unclouded by emotion, undistracted by charm, and unswayed by sophistry. It's through logic that a king commands his counsel, through reason that he discerns the right path amid 1,000 false trails. Let no argument pass untested. Let no counsel go unquestioned. For only through the crucible of logical inquiry can we purify ideas, separating gold from dirt, and thus ensure that every action is grounded in truth and leads to the flourishing of the kingdom. This is the power of logic applied to leadership. Remember this well. Logical reasoning is not an academic exercise, but a living force, a vital tool in command. Wield it as you would a blade, fearlessly, and always with unwavering purpose. Tonight, as you prepare for bed, take a moment to retreat into the quiet sanctuary of your own mind. Reflect upon a decision you made recently. Any decision. Bring it forth as if it were a living thing and scrutinize it with the light of logic that we have kindled today. Examine each premise that underpinned your decision, as if peeling away the layers of an onion to reveal the core within. Were these premises grounded in fact, or were they merely shadows masquerading as truths? To reason is to journey ever upward, scaling the peaks of clarity where the air is thin, but the view is unobstructed. It is in this quiet self-dialogue, free from external voices, that true wisdom is forged. Document your reflections, as a general maps the terrain before a campaign. Today, we laid the foundation on which your intellectual fortitude will be built. You have learned to wield the principles of logic, to construct syllogisms, and to apply these tools to the governance of men and the strategies of war. But more than that, you have begun to cultivate the habit of reflection, an exercise that will arm you with clarity in moments of doubt, and strengthen your resolve in times of uncertainty. Prepare yourself, for next time we shall venture deeper into the understanding of human flourishing and virtue. To know the mind is the first triumph. To master the soul is the greatest victory of all.